All right, go ahead.
All right, we're going to bring the February 3rd, 2022 Design Review, Ohio City Design Review to order. Nate, do you want to call attendance?
Yes, Alex Frondorf,
Here.
Marika Clark,
Here.
Chris Lozier,
Here.
and Margaret Lang.
Here.
Great. Our first applicant is the Cento renovation at 1948 West 25th. We're going to start with a presentation from Carl about information he found, and then we'll go to a presentation from Dimit Architects.
Morning, everybody. Carl Grunges, Cleveland Landmark staff. We did some extra research because of the questions that were raised last time that this was reviewed. And the building was originally constructed in 1912 as a 3-story building with 2 stories added later. And here we have a picture from what the original storefront originally looked like. It was completely open, the different marbles there. Next slide, please. So sometime by the 1980s, and I think these photographs are from about 1983 or so. Some of these were not dated at all. There's been some changes, but eventually into the next slide, please, the Cook Coffee Company moved in, and their original proposal in 1985 was to put the iron gates out in the front, which was sympathetic to the existing storefront. Next slide, please. And you can see that how they worked was going into the columns and then sliding out or opening out into the right of way, which may not have been correct. But then the next slide, a couple of photographs from this time period. You can see that there has been changes here, and to the next slide in 1987, you have a good front on view of what it looked like. Still looks like we all have original material, but then in 1987, go ahead, Nate. They proposed to change the front, and you'll see from here, from original to the next slide, which this is when the storefront was enclosed. And that, I believe, went through storefront renovation at one point. Not entirely sure, but this is what we had in our files. So in the next slide, you have a glimpse of it there, and then on the next slide as well. I think this is where you start seeing the enclosure during this period. So sometime between 1987 and 2001, the next slide, this is when the Market 25 renovation started. So you see it's enclosed already, where the storefront comes in behind the columns, and then how everything was transferred over. So next slide shows some interiors from that period. But what was interesting on the next slide, or the next couple of slides, is that, go to the next, please. You can see that the original marble was being removed from the bases of the interior. So through this process, you can see where some of the original material still exists, but then a lot was already removed. So finding this out shows that basically none or very little of the original interior still remains, or the original storefront still remains. So here we have the exterior photographs from about that period of time too. You can see that the columns were also changed. And then Market 25, when it opened, this is a good time because you're right in between here, because you can actually see that the Woolworths building that was right next door has been demolished. You see the excavator there that looks like they're starting the construction for the building next door, which you will see on the next slide, and how it turned out as what we have as our current look. And then on the next slide, we have from 2005 when they were putting the Cento sign up in the front. So this has been an enclosed storefront since 1987. So therefore, anything behind that is not within our jurisdiction. Also, none of the storefront nor the cladding on the columns is original. So everything is within 25 years. So as you look at the presentation that's being given to you, base it upon that information. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carl. And now we will have the presentation from, I believe, Maggie Young is here to speak on this.
Yes, hi. And we have Gary Ogrocki from Dimit Architects as well, joining us today. Thank you so much, Carl. I think that it's such a helpful, really seeing the transformation of the project through the years. It was really informative and really appreciate that. And we have Sam McNulty as well.
Hi, folks. Sorry, I was a little tired, a little late here. Thanks, Carl. I caught the tail end of it, but that was great. I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, and we did have a call with Carl and Don Pettit as well. But since our last meeting, and did get kind of some of that information, which was great and helpful in shaping how we come back to you guys today. Sam, did you want to give any kind of prior introduction, or should we just go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, I think we're ready to jump in.
Great. So we did expand upon the kind of context and existing conditions photos here a little bit on this first page and the second page. Really kind of, especially along that bottom line, you can see from all the snow, these are taken within the last couple of weeks here. But just to give you a little better view of kind of what those columns look like today, and the operable Ramco doors behind there, and the kind of fixed storefront at the outer edges. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So we did include on this one, especially some really close-up shots of the existing columns. You can see it's a little hard to tell what they are because they're painted, but it seems to be some kind of like glass fiber reinforced concrete or cement board or something similar to that. Not a stone material. You can see it's kind of fuzzy and deteriorating, especially down there at the base where it's been exposed to the elements over the years. So definitely something that needs to be addressed kind of regardless in the process of shaping up this storefront. So again, those are just some more existing photos. Here we have kind of the full context of the elevation of the facade to help kind of put the scale of the proposed first floor into context a little bit for you, showing how we're kind of playing off those Chicago style windows on the upper floors with kind of the narrower side panels and then the wider central panel. And we took that across all three kind of bays in the storefront. Can we go to the next slide? We have the colors. Yeah, and we also aligned this with a plan with a little bit of ceiling information as well, just to kind of give you a full picture of what's going on inside the space. So you can see those kind of rosettes of the historic plaster ceiling. So since last time you saw this elevation, we did make some modifications, especially in hearing with what Carl and Don had to say, and that was to raise the transom height a little bit so that it was more in keeping with a historic proportions and with where that kind of head height would have been and where there's some elements kind of currently. So that's going to be about 9 feet off the ground to the top of that door, and which plays nicely with some of those historic soffit elements that will be remaining on the inside of the space as well. That kind of creates a nice alignment. We did kind of keep the lower horizontal. Part of that is because if you look especially at that center bay, the glass gets really, really large without that. So we really need that to kind of help support the entire storefront. And I think overall it creates a nice patterning on the facade as well. So kind of as we discussed before, we have a really kind of simple facade here, really keeping that openness that would have been original when there was no facade here at all, and visibility to the inside of the space, and help activate both the street from seeing the activity within the restaurant, and then also activating the restaurant from the activity of the street as well. And then we also included some plans showing the demolition. We are noting that, as Carl noted, there isn't maybe a ton of actual original elements from the inside of the space, but those elements are going to be salvaged and kept by the owner, reused wherever possible, but certainly not leaving, not going into a dumpster.
Yeah,
is the general intent there.
in fact, I was clearing out my office here into the wee hours last night with a flashlight because our power was out. I found an original Freeze and Chili paper shopping bag that I forgot we had. So we're gonna frame that and put it on the wall somewhere.
Very cool.
It's a minor detail, but it's kind of special, I think.
Yeah, doing everything we can to honor the history of this building. And I think, is there one more page? Right, so this is the ceiling plan as well. And all of that historic plaster ceiling and kind of the soffits at the outer edges will be remaining as well. And then finally, there was the storefront. There are a couple more images of that, the overhead door, just to help clarify what that looks like in an open position. Again, it pivots in the middle and raises entirely up. So it's just this big flat plane that will span half inside the space and half outside the space, which creates a nice awning as well.
So the whole panel moves. There are no hinges mid-panel.
Correct. And really the benefit of that was allowing us to then, set those mullions to align with the design and the storefront overall, versus when you have something that has a pivot or hinge point, that's going to be more controlled by the engineering of the door.
And all the mechanicals for that are on the interior, I think I see there.
Correct. Yep. So that it's a counterweighted system, kind of like old windows. And so those will be aligned behind those column elements inside the space and enclosed to all look kind of uniform.
Are those, I guess, muttons in the middle of the different panes exterior to the glass or interior?
So it'll be kind of like an aluminum storefront system. So the glass is kind of back a little ways from the front.
Okay, got it.
That makes sense.
You had there's those systems where all of the divisions are actually interior to the glass.
Oh no, yeah, it'll look very much like the storefront system where the glass is actually broken up into the panes that you see.
So if we were looking at this from street level and we did not know that there was this mechanical thing behind it inside, would we be able to discern that this was a movable window system?
No, that's kind of, I think, really a benefit of it. Yeah.
Yeah, being one essentially giant slab of storefront, it's basically built in place as if it were a fixed storefront. But then when we trigger the opening, it literally just the whole slab moves up and into the ceiling.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
It's not cheap, but we think it's the most respectful to the historic nature of the neighborhood and the building.
We've had some garage doors come before us before, and we've not found those to be appropriate. But given the way that this functions, I think those concerns that typically attached to the garage door motif are absent here.
I believe Carl Brunges with the Landmark Commission had a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Landmarks Commission has approved these doors in a couple of other locations in historic districts here in Cleveland, one on East 4th, and I think there's one on Superior. Could you go back to the rendering of the proposed storefront? One of the other things we asked for was the continuous bulkhead to come across, which I think helps make that seem more like a fixed storefront rather than the movable door. So it brings that line across.
Thank you for bringing that up, Carl.
Yeah, that was my paramount concern, and I think you've addressed that. So,
Yeah, I just had a clarification question for Carl. So just want to make sure it's clear in my mind. So the storefront that's left and right of the facade right now, as well as the column surrounds, are not historic and are not original, correct?
Correct. The materials around that have all been replaced. The storefronts on either side are in the right locations, but the materials were changed.
Gotcha.
And our intent is to align the new storefront with the location in plan view of where those existing storefront is.
and then if we looked at this at profile, would the storefront meet those columns, or is it recessed from those columns?
So it would,
In the plan, you can see it a little bit.
exactly. So if you look at the plan directly above in the view that's on the screen
Oh,
now.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. So just to clarify, go back down a little bit if you don't mind. Thank you. So you can see the storefront is pulled out. It's to align kind of with the outer piers of the building. And then at the columns, just because of how that door is going to function and where the mechanics have to be, the door itself is actually going to be recessed a little bit, as we had discussed as a potential option on our last discussion. So There will be a little bit of a change of plane between the fixed storefront and the side bays and the operable door in the middle, which I think is hopefully a pro, as well as how it works out best functionally.
And can you talk through, did you consider putting all three kind of bays at that recessed line? And can you talk through, yeah.
We did not consider that. I think in the desire to keep wherever we could the line of the existing storefront, which would be, as Carl mentioned, it's not original, but it's in the original location. So the fix on the side is in the original location as well. And that allows us to reuse that portion of the solid bulkhead at the bottom as well.
Oh, got it. Okay. That makes sense.
So the question is, does it look better having the middle panel there recessed, or would it look better if they were all on the same plane?
Mm-hmm.
I personally probably prefer it the way it is to having everything pulled out, because I just think it will make the line of the columns a little bit more visible, give a little bit more depth, which you see on the columns now. Whereas if you pulled everything out, I don't even think you would read the columns at all. It would just look like a completely flat plane.
I would tend to agree with that, Marika. I think that little bit of articulation kind of adds some definition. And like Maggie, you were saying, like the north and south portion of the storefront, like outside the columns, is again, it kind of stays with the original kind of pattern of the intent of the building, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a nod to the original openness in the center.
Yeah, well said.
I have a different question, unless anybody else wants to comment on the column line issue.
Go for it.
My only question really is on this elevation. I think is a good reference. I mean, if you could just maybe scroll up a little bit so you can see the rest of the, the line of that lower interior, like kind of divided like mutton thing, it looks to me like it should be equal to the width of the upper one, but right now it's lower. And I know maybe you were trying to make it look like it's at a line of the knee wall, but if you look at all of the upper story windows, they're all equally divided. And I guess I'm not saying that the middle should be equal, but it just, when I look at this, I'm kind of like, why is that lower division not equal to the upper one? And I think the upper one is 2'10" and the lower one is 1'10".
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can give you my logic there. And it's actually something that I debated back and forth with as well. So it is set the same distance from the ground plane as the top one is set from the head height, rather than having equal panes of glass. Like I said, it was something that I kind of drew both ways and was waffling back and forth. I think we could move that up the 1 foot to make the glass panes equal, if that's something that.
Could you scroll down to the colored version? Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has. To me, I think it would look more even or balanced or something if the panes of glass were equal, but yeah, that's just my initial thought.
It's funny. I don't think there's a wrong answer, because I think both versions could work.
And I think, Maggie, didn't that, since the base of the storefront is thicker, that was, I think, and Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that a comment that you guys made to make that, you wanted to see that base a little thicker when we talked?
Yeah, we wanted to bring that across to make it seem like it was a hole down there, because then it doesn't make it look like it's just a pane of glass reaching down to the ground.
Right.
At that point, I think this gives it a more cohesive look.
Mhm.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Marika, as well. I'm in the same position. I think one of the other considerations that I would have if we were to move that mullion up, or that Munson up, is how it changes the proportion of the sort of the center windows, from some that are more vertically oriented to everything that's more horizontal. So I think that's the other sort of consideration too. And if we look at the windows above, those have, the composition is more sort of vertical than it is maybe horizontal. So, but yeah, that's the balance in my mind too. Is what's the right configuration there? And I don't dislike what I'm seeing here because of that. You know, the read of things being a little bit more vertical, but I wouldn't be opposed if that changed based on the way this conversation progresses.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair point, Chris. I think, you know, in a perfect world, we would just do away with that entirely, but unfortunately the glass just gets too big. And we ran it past the engineering department for the door itself to vet that, and they shot us down.
Yeah, understood.
What is the difference in the width of the proposed new columns versus the existing?
I think if you go to the plan view, we have those drawn. I think scroll down rather. I think it's one of the last pages. There you go. And if you zoom in on the storefront, I'm sorry, you should be able to kind of see them overlaid a little bit. That may help. So I don't know the numbers off the top of my head on what the existing ones are, but I would say we're cutting off maybe 4 inches on each side or so, 4 to 6 inches on either side. Just ballparking it.
And then my other question was, with the awning, you're certain that the garage door function can open underneath the placement of the awning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't go past that 90 degrees when it opens, I think.
No.
Okay.
And is the awning existing, sorry, is the awning using the existing structure, just reclad in a new canvas, or is this a whole new apparatus?
This is entirely new. It's going to be a bit of a different angle than is existing, just to fall within kind of the design of the proportions we were looking for.
So this one looks, it appears, at least on the page, to be smaller than what's there now. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Vertically, kind of as you look at it from the front view, it's definitely smaller. We've flattened the slope of it a bit.
Okay. And it's going to be that color that's proposed? Okay.
Yeah, we were proposing the light color to help brighten the space internally as a priority, and kind of just respect the lightness of the terracotta facade as well of the building.
And will there be signage? Do you anticipate signage being placed on the awning?
Not on the awning itself, no.
Okay.
We're going to come back separately for like, we don't have a sign design yet because we don't have a name yet.
Okay.
But we'll be taking down the existing signage and replacing with something that we'll come back with.
Okay. I think that's fine, and the lighting that you've selected there, I think works well in the building. My only and my final comment is the thickness of the muttons or the mullions. Have you considered a slightly thicker mutton or mullion crossbars there?
As far as horizontally, like in the storefront itself?
Horizontally and vertically, yeah. Make all of the grid slightly thicker, the bars themselves.
We did hear your comments regarding that from the last meeting. I think the goal is to create as much openness as possible in this, and also to be able to use a standard aluminum storefront system, which does have a 2-inch sight line, to frame out the fixed areas.
So so the answer is no, I guess is the answer. Is that
I-
it can't be, or that you prefer it not to be?
We would prefer it not to be. There you go. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
consider it. We weighed that as an option, but we would prefer it this way.
And really also with the door, I don't know that that's an option, you know, storefront, you have different sections you can get, but there's limited options for the door. I don't know if you can make it a lot thicker. So that would be we'd have to verify that. It might be, that might be tough.
What's the width of the doors? Are those 3-foot leaps, or are those?
Those are 3-foot leaves, yes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Is there anything about this that you're seeking approval of that we haven't discussed yet? No. All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Nate, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, Alex Frondor,
Aye.
Marika Clark,
Aye.
Chris Lozier,
Aye.
Margaret Land.
Aye.
Okay, the motion to approve as presented is approved. Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
everybody. Appreciate that very much.
Nate, I believe Mr. Wall has joined the meeting.
Yes,
Doug?
I apologize for being late. I was having technical difficulties logging in.
Doug, I'll turn it back over to you now.
All right. Well, Nate, let's, I guess, move on to our next item.
All right, so our next item is AMBA at 1430 West 28th. Who's here?
Nate, I sent you a message.
Yes,
I just-
and Marika is recusing herself from this project.
Thanks.
Before I leave, I just want to say I've seen the plans for AMBA. They look really, really cool. So tell Doug and team we're looking forward to it.
Doug's on the call, so he could hear you.
Hello, Doug.
Thanks, Sam. And we are happy to be in the neighborhood with you and Graham and everyone as well. I'm driving. I have 2 more minutes and then I'll be home. So
Perfect.
well, thanks.
Eyes on the road, Doug.
It's not so bad.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Sam.
So Kelley Shaffer has been leading the efforts on the design, which I'll echo Sam's sentiments. It's absolutely beautiful, the approach that she and Doug and Todd are making for this building that has really not been something that has had a public facing component maybe ever. So to bring life into it and to do it with the creative exceptionalism that Doug and his team brings to all these projects that they've got a proven track record is exciting for the city of Cleveland and the neighborhood specifically. But I'll just let Kelley take it away and then provide any answers if need be.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, just echoing all those sentiments, and it's exciting. I'm originally from Pittsburgh and I moved to Cleveland many years ago now. I don't want to reveal that. I don't want to reveal that timeline, but I used to live in Ohio City. So I was excited to kind of find my way back, and very fun to be a part of a project that initially was a part of Shaffer Printing. It all kind of feels full circle. We've all talked a little bit about some of the loose symbolism tied to the project, so it's exciting. So thanks for having me here and for everybody's time. Nate, I think we can move to the first slide. And this is primarily to speak to the exterior and signage aspects of the building. I believe aspects of this have already had a first pass from the architectural and code standpoint, but Doug has, with enthusiasm, from the beginning parts of this project, wanted to preserve the mural that was on the wall. And we all feel very enthusiastic about that. And that's something that we really strive for and concepted solutions around, not only from the exterior, but the interior. Also embracing, of course, conversations would come up about opening up the building and putting more windows in. I have felt from the beginning we had the opportunity and the ability to really lean into the structure as it was. And just this unassuming exterior wall with this incredible mural and embracing it and just really trying to breathe some new life into it. So in the conversations about how to treat the entrances, again, top of priority is the preservation of the mural. There was a new entrance cut in on the north, but I know we don't have to go into too much detail about exit and entrance, but we are proposing, we will be color matching the blacks of the mural to create a painted application, essentially taller to the full height of the elevation of the building on the main entrance, which is the dining entrance, and then a shorter application of that to the north entrance on the wall. Reason for that being, again, out of respect for the mural and the artist, we had run iterations past her as what she felt was the most appropriate application for the entrances that she felt fit the mural and didn't create any division in the full narrative of the tiger in pursuit of the bird. So that is where that's the reasoning essentially behind what you're seeing, but we also still feel an effective solution to, there's been conversation about directing traffic, like what is the primary entrance? What's the entrance you're entering for dining, just from a traffic perspective. The higher entrance is the primary entrance to the restaurant, whereas the north entrance in this drawing is to the bar.
You say higher, you mean the rear entrance that's on the lower left elevation. That's going to be the main entrance.
Correct. And calling it this, essentially, no, this is the east facing wall, which is on 28th. So calling it the south end of the east wall entrance or the north end entrance. This is the primary entrance to the restaurant. The dining room is in here. There's all collectively under one address, obviously, though, and one space and ownership. But this is.
I'm sorry. Is the idea that entrance on the east wall then is also an available entrance for pedestrians to enter, even though it's not the main one, or is it just an egress?
This is also an entrance to the building. The space on the inside internally is kind of divided into, while connected by like I believe a 90-minute fire door and open, it has the ability to be closed for different types of service. So if the dining room closes earlier than the bar, there's a more controlled environment with its own individual entrance. And obviously all entrances are up to fire code and backed by those reasons for why they are there. And also the way they open, to my understanding, I know Graydon, the architect, is not on this call, who has worked primarily within the code for both fire safety and then egress details. But and then primary signage, if you go to the next slide, it's an elaboration essentially on what we're speaking about right now. Primary signage will be on this south end dining entrance. So again, kind of supporting the encouragement of traffic flow to that door. Has a fin sign off the building. It's above the height, above 6'8", so it can project. It's slated currently to be fabricated at 24 inches off the building. It's a flush mount to the surface, so it essentially looks like a floating square. You can see it in this lower image of what the fabrication is being based off of. That box can slide off of the mount so that there's a semi-permanent aspect to it. It can be modified. It's being finished we've worked with a fabricator to create a custom patina. So I would say visually comparable to what like a Corten steel looks like, but doesn't have like the matte quality to it. It's a custom chemical treatment to the steel that's being applied onto the interior bar. And a primary goal in kind of what this looks like visually is this I would say the interior plans are a bit of a juxtaposition to what you see on the exterior of the building. And we really are looking for, I think we've embraced throughout this process, not I mean, with intention, we've wanted to preserve that unassuming exterior and again, the mural, but give a nod to what's happening on the interior of the space. So when that door opens, it's a very sensory experience with the type of food being served and all those different aspects, but bringing some of that depth and contrast and color palette to the exterior of the building. And then I also like the application of something that felt a little bit more tactile and a little bit more raw, still pairing well with the refinement and bright color of the mural, because we do, through all of this, want to be giving subtle nods to what this space used to be. And again, the rawness of, I think, as Graham articulated very well, it hasn't had a public facing use, correct? I think I'm articulating that in the same way you did. And I didn't want to depart from what that building has been and what it's represented. And so the approach has just been sort of like a simplistic, understated application to the facade that feels true to the architecture. We didn't want to do, I personally, and I think Doug would echo the same sentiment with signage, kind of a more pared back, like authentic, like we have a light lighting the sign versus a sign that's illuminated internally, to stick to kind of the primary nature of it, is how I would articulate it. So
when he saw this previously, there was some discussion, there was a plan to extend a parapet wall above the north segment of that east wall and talk about various ways of terminating it or where it should end and so forth, but it doesn't look like that's here anymore. Is that
totally different request? So that's made it through landmarks and gotten approval. So this is
okay. So that's still part of the deal. It's just not shown in this particular presentation. Okay.
Right. This is merely a signage presentation. So we went through landmarks last week and got approval based on the feedback on a parapet wall terminating towards the 3-story building. But important note, because it is the same elevation that we're looking at now. And I think the biggest thing to point out that there were in some of the thumbnails is this perspective looks like the top to bottom paint on the south door impedes on the tail and the star, and it doesn't. It's farther over. And then similarly, the approval had already occurred for the penetration on the door to the north, and this is just how we treat the update of it. And I think part of the discussion with Michaela Pici, the artist who's based in Berlin but of Italian descent, and she's been really having fun this week as we embark into the Year of the Tiger, showing this mural on her various social media channels, is that she thought that painting that black as opposed to trying to mimic the teal color with the sun difference wouldn't be as true to the intent as Kelley had suggested. So this is taking direction from Michaela, who's really excited to come back to Cleveland and eat the deliciousness that Doug and his team is going to put together.
Well, something that didn't occur to me in our last conversation about the door and building and so forth was, did anyone consider, since you're cutting the tiger's paws off, of doing some kind of a screen applique like you see on buses and so forth for advertising, of recreating those paws, extending over the door into the glass. That I don't know if anybody thought about that, but that might be one way to kind of get what you need out of the door and not take away so much from the mural.
That was one of the options that we talked through with the artist, and she did not want the different materials to distract, and she likes the fact that it's almost as if his paws are going behind the door as he might be pouncing, on the bird, is the way that she expressed the narrative. So we had that same idea, and that was something that Kelley had mocked up as we shared with the artist. But this is the direction that the artist felt was most true to her intent.
Okay, well, I'm happy to go along with that if that's what the artist wants. And I think the signage looks good. I think it's understated, but does the job. So I'm good with that.
I have a question about the relationship between the black dark bar of the vertical on the south entrance and how it relates to the elevation drawing that's below. Just want to get an understanding of the relationship between where that egress fixture is located and how it fits within that zone, that black zone.
Can we go back a couple slides? Yeah. Great.
This is the most recent reference of the exterior of the building. As you can tell by the snow, I wanted to make sure I had a real-time reference for you. You can see within the tiger's tail, there's an actual box there for that egress fixture, approved at a height. Yeah, and so you can, when you're actually, because of how wide the building is from that, wider representation, it does look like the paint is hitting on the edge of the tail. Something that we've talked to Graham about, essentially what we're trying to do here with the width of the box and what determines it is that the masonry work that has had to be done on the new door that was cut out creates a certain width around the door. And again, in the preservation of the mural details, it's much cleaner for us to apply something over top than to try to match the paint that's been sun faded or maybe not exactly the same anymore. So it's about 9 inches wide on the sides of the door, and that this image and mock up here represents that width. The closest, the aspect that I feel gets a bit, the relationship gets a bit tight is the edge of the star. But we've talked to Graham about if the black is breaking into that after they're able to, after masonry work is complete and we know that final width, the star would be painted around or repainted over the black. So we will not be cutting off the mural. It is more like it would be a layering of the mural on top of the black. I do believe we will clear it. Just because 9 was generous in what I was, there was very fringe elements, but that's an accurate, I feel, render and representation of it to proportion of what we've measured.
No, and I really appreciate sort of the care and the delicateness of, that you've been paying attention to as part of this whole process, working with the artist and making sure that what we're doing is really tied in real time to kind of what the conditions are and all of that. So kudos to the team. I think this is great.
Thank you. I believe, I don't know, as Nate, typically, I don't know if this is a time you prompt questions on this aspect or if you would.
Yes, does anybody have any additional questions or comments?
My only comment, this is Doug, the owner. I am just, the reason I picked the building was for the tiger and we're doing Indian fusion as our concept. And so all I want to do is highlight how important the mural is to our concept from the outside. And then on the inside, it's going to be like you're transported to an amazing experience. So I'm so happy that we're honoring it and creating a new sort of street within our district that will hopefully become really busy. So
I do too. We look forward to having you join our neighborhood. All right, without any additional questions or comments, would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll move to approve as presented.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, Nate, please call the roll.
Doug Wall,
Yes.
Alex Frondorf,
Aye.
Chris Lozier,
Aye.
Margaret Land.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
All right,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Graham, are you still there? No,
Hey,
I
I'm
guess-
Doug. Hey, yeah, no, I didn't jump off.
Oh, okay. I just wanted, on a completely different subject, I wanted to just ask informally what's going on, if anything, with the fabric murals that kind of blew off your other project.
Yeah, they're getting reprinted and repositioned. So, we had worked with the same team that did the LeBron James mural and used the same application, and yet, there are issues that the concrete was sharper than the side of the building. So we're working through those issues. It's frustrating because, that's why we spent the premium to work with the folks that have been around the block and have been on top of them to try to get Dinara's mural back up. But there's parts of it that are still up that are beautiful and can be enjoyed, but we got to tackle along Detroit as you round the corner along Church, and then even the elevation on the west. So
you got to work with a stronger fabric or connections or what?
Yeah, and a tighter. So like there's a whole cabling system of eye hooks and cables that, frankly, I think they've got to continue to tighten as opposed to just set it and forget it. So
Great. Well, look forward to seeing them go back up.
yeah, because the crazy part, like, it's not as if we were reinventing the wheel on it. It's a proven system that we've seen in not just Cleveland, but a bunch of different cities. And even the material, the mesh, that's what it's intended for. So there's a bumper system that we're going to employ behind it to hopefully address the sharpness of the concrete, even though the concrete was always part of the plan. So it's not as if we decided to do it after. It's a little bit of a head scratcher.
Okay, well, thanks for the update.
Yeah.
They're coming back. All right, thanks, Graham.
Thanks.
All right, our next project is 3408 Clinton Avenue. I believe this is Greg Soltis and Matthew Weimer here to present.
Hey, Nate, how you doing?
Hey, an old professor.
I know, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. It's nice to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Hi, everyone.
So, all right, I guess there's a lot of slides, so we can go rather quickly through them and then pause when needed. This is the property information. So it shows the address, the size of the parcel, so on and so forth. This is a survey that was done that shows the existing house that's on the property and all the space that is in the rear, which currently is like a parking lot that I believe the adjacent building, the industrial building next door uses. Is that correct, Matt?
They were when they still owned the property, correct?
Yeah.
I think it was meant to be overflow parking for their staff.
Right. And that's accessed off the alley in the back. So if you keep going, shows the zoning that it's 2-family residential. And then these are some aerial images, and you can see where the industrial building is, and where it says chimney, just to the left of that is the house. And on the bottom image, just behind the chimney, that's the house. And then if you go to the next page, you can see an aerial image that shows the house and its context on Clinton Avenue. And keep going. And then these are some context images. So they show the collection of architecture that's on the street, which ranges, from everything from, Italianate from the Victorian era to a mid-century type building that you can see at number 6. So this is one of the few remaining Greek Revival houses in the city. Again, this is a map that shows our site that shows the legal description of the property. Keep going. You can see the house is a little bit crooked on the site. It's a little bit angled. And then these are some images that show the morphology of the neighborhood over time. So some parcel maps that show the house pretty much, you know, a fixture of the neighborhood as the decades pass by. And then we did consult with a number of people to try to understand, you know, Greek Revival architecture and get some example images for guidance. And Tim Barrett helped us out with this, which I'm sure you're all familiar with Tim Barrett. So you can see the images up at the top left are, and then even the top right are kind of more in line with the probably what the house looked like. We weren't able to find any historic images of the house itself. Scroll down. And then, so these are some existing condition photos, and you can see what the house looks like in the top left, if you're on Clinton, looking at the house. And then the images in the rest of the images kind of show what it looks like on the sides and the back. There is an addition that is on the rear of the house that was added sometime much later from the original construction. And also you'll see in the top left image, there's this little bump out on the right side. That's a bathroom that was added. So we're proposing to remove those. Go to the next slide, Nate. These show some existing conditions on the inside. There's been a number of alterations, and there also was a fire in the house. So we're gonna be taking care of all that and reworking the interior. And so this shows the existing conditions of the floor plan. So you can see when you walk in, there's that bathroom that was kind of added to the right, and what they call a bedroom, but is not really a bedroom behind the bathroom. It's a very narrow space. And then some stairs that go up right near the door, and then additional stairs that go down to the basement on the left. And then in the back, there was that addition where you see that says kitchenette. So that was added. And then the stairs that go down to the basement, which was kind of like a fruit cellar type of condition years and years ago, were kept. And the addition was added next to it. And keep going to the next slide. So this shows the industrial structure that's next door, the existing historic structure on the top right, and then what we're proposing to add in the back on the top, center, and left. So you see there's where there's kind of like a chimney that you can see, that would be a great room that's added behind the existing house, where the addition that was added, you know, probably in the early 20th century will be removed. This house will be placed there. We're proposing this little joint in between the existing house and the new structure to separate the two. So to give the existing structure its own sort of prominence and identity. There'll be a courtyard, and then the addition in the back will contain the master bedroom and bath and closet, and then a garage. These are the floor plans that show the new kind of open sort of living in on the bottom floor. So we have a kind of like a front room and a kitchen that then transitions into the great room that would be where the addition starts, and then 2 bedrooms and a bath upstairs and laundry upstairs. And then in the rear beyond the courtyard will be a master bedroom, a walk-in, a full bath, another laundry, and then a garage. And these are some inspiration images. We were looking to do something. Yeah, you can keep going, Nate. We were looking to do something that blends with the Greek Revival architecture for the new edition, but has its own identity. So you can see here, we're proposing restoring a nice, simple Greek Revival style architecture with a door surround and just some window surrounds, and then, you know, fixing the condition up by the architrave or the boards that go around the front or along the roof line. We did have kind of like a triangular pediment above the door, and then the design or the block club wanted us to do something simpler. So we have this nice flat condition now. Go to the next slide, Nate. This is the proposed east elevation, where there's no windows existing on the house facing this way. And then also on the new addition, we're just proposing there be no windows. And then we put these trellises up, and there'll be some vining plants that grow on it to add some softness to it. So the neighbor will have privacy in their backyard, and the whoever lives in this house will have a courtyard that has its own privacy. Next slide. This is what you would see from the alley. So you could see the man door there and then the garage. So, you know, all the access for automobiles would be off the alley in the back. Next slide. This is the proposed west elevation, which you really would never see like this because the industrial building's there, but it shows the paneling that we're proposing, which are like probably cement fiberboard panels that would be vertical, and there'd be seams in between them. And then matching that same width would be glazing where we need windows, and and then we have some sconces that would be affixed to the building along the sort of little alley path that goes between the industrial building and this property. Next slide. So this shows the front. Oh, and yeah, that shows the old pediment that was kind of like above the door that no longer exists. It also shows we have a side door and a window next to the side door facing this kind of yard that's in front of the industrial property. Next slide. There's the fixed one. So you can see both. That was smart, Matt. Next one. And then these are some aerial views that show massing. So the building in the back is basically the same. It's shorter than the front building, so it gives the front building prominence. It has the same roof pitch and gable that's just extended in the back. And so it's kind of an echo of the front building. But it has, and it's even, you know, going to have similar sort of coloring. So it is like this echo, but then the details are a little bit different. So it becomes a building of its own time. Next slide. These are some additional aerials to give an idea of how the massing and the two buildings work together. So the back building just kind of peeks out a little bit on the little alley. And I think there's a view that shows, if you keep going, Nate, a view that shows what it would be like from the side. This is what the courtyard would feel like as you walk in the back. And that's the little kind of peekaboo as you're walking down the pedestrian path that runs between the industrial building and this property. And this is if you were walking down the path coming from the alley. And that's the view from inside the bedroom. View from inside the great room. And that's it. So we welcome any questions or comments or.
I just want to compliment you on, I think that this is a very well done way of taking a historic structure and having an addition that is complementary to it without overwhelming it and leaving the historic structure as the primary. It doesn't rise above it. It doesn't overshadow it. It meets the Secretary of Interior standards in that regard, I think, very well. So thank you for that. I don't have a lot to say about the middle part. I would only review the front and the garage facing. When you go to BZA, I'm sure that you'll need a variance for lot coverage.
Yes.
We don't typically see proposals that cover the percentage of the lot like this one. I would say that given the unique situation of the lot, its confines, and the need to preserve the historic structure, that why we might not otherwise approve this sort of thing for that lot coverage. I think it's well done and warranted here.
Thank you.
And then my only question or feedback is on the facade, the front. You're restoring the, if you can find an image of it there, you showed detail for their, go up one more. Yeah, you showed detail there on the pediment part, and then where it returns. I think that it might not just be showing up on this image, but it should have the same level of detail as the rake going up the pediment there. That when it comes back and it returns, that level of detail should return. And I don't know that it's either showing up there or maybe it's not drawn there, but it shouldn't just be a flat board returning. There should be some detail to that as well.
Yeah, there is some detail there. Nate, can you go to the next slide? And then
if I missed it, I apologize.
No, that's all right. I mean, they're not like the fanciest images, right? So if you zoom in, you can see that we have some of the detail above the door there.
I'm not talking about above the door. I'm talking about the top.
Oh, up at the top. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the door at all. I'm talking, yeah, above that there. Where the cornice is, so the cornice,
Yes.
how it rakes up, when it
Yes.
comes and returns down, when it's parallel with the ground, that those should have the same detailing as well.
Okay. Okay. Good
That's-
point. Got it. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanna also
Pediment
echo.
Eve isn't quite right.
Could you repeat that?
The pediment eve doesn't look quite right. It looks, I'm not sure I understand what you're actually doing there, but it looks like the eve return on the front is too narrow. It should match the.
Right, that's what I was trying to get at, Doug.
Yeah.
You just said it better than I did.
All right, good.
Yeah, we'll take another
Thank
look
you.
at that when we come back to you again. We'll have that corrected.
Yeah, and I should have stated, this is for conceptual approval, right?
Yes.
That's what I have, yeah.
And then the windows, all of those are divided lights, simulated divided lights, so that the grills are external to the glass.
That's the intent. Yes.
Okay. I would make that a requirement. I would not.
Okay.
vote for Approval otherwise. I couldn't do that.
Okay.
That's as close to mandatory as you can make it.
Right. Okay.
I apologize if I missed this because I got dropped out there for a couple of minutes. I wanted to ask about the new siding on the addition. You know, you said it was a fiber composite panel, you know, and you show joint lines, but is it like a tongue and groove, or is there or haven't you actually selected something yet?
Well, it probably would be the Hardy board. I can't remember the name of the series right now. It's the tip of my tongue, but it's a more contemporary sort of product that they have that are these smooth panels that you can get in different sizes. So we would look to have sort of like these 3 foot by 8 foot panels that have a seam in between them that just run vertically and repeat down the facade.
So I guess
they
that's
would-
my point. What is the joint condition on that? Is there a batten strip, or is there an H channel that they fit into, or are they tongue and groove? I guess I'd just like to see when you come back, not necessarily now, because maybe you haven't figured it out, but what is the joint condition?
Right, and we don't have that exactly figured out, but it's not going to be a batten. I think it's probably going to be more like some sort of C channel, or like you said, an H channel or something like that, that has a more contemporary look.
All right, well, we'll want to see what that is.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to echo Alex's earlier comments about, really creating an addition that is very complementary to the historic structure. I think this is a really, great looking proposal, and I'm excited to see that this house that's been, derelict for many, many, many years, finally becoming a contributing member to the street and the neighborhood. I have just one question. I think this is a good image to look at. So the second floor, you had mentioned sort of in the plan that the addition is offset from the existing structure by some dimension. And just looking at the second floor windows in relation to the roof of the new addition, there is some gap between that facade and the new roof, correct? So that the windows aren't being sort of cut how they appear sort of in this particular image. So the windows are full height windows, or whatever the dimensions are, and then the new roof sort of is beyond that.
And
yes.
approximately what is that dimension?
The dimension, I have the model open up on my other computer right here.
On
Currently,
page 13, you see a little bit of it. On page 13, you see the divider from the top view. But it doesn't provide it really in the plan as to how that works exactly there.
yeah, so currently the dimension is 2 foot 8 inches. So it's basically the width of one of the windows, because it's going to be glass on the sides. Is there elevation view, Nate, that we can go to? Go the other direction, I think.
Page 20 has a good elevation, or like side elevation.
Hi, Marika, how are you?
Hi, good.
Nice to see you.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, so you can see here, it's kind of like the
Okay.
vertical, the windows, and it's just repeated there, but it's kind of clear and different so that it reads as this little joint in between the two buildings.
Yep, no, this is a good drawing to look at. So another question. So if you go back up to the site plan and then the floor plan directly below it, there's a little bit of a discrepancy, I think, between what the site plan is showing versus, and if I just draw on the
Yes.
screen, if you can go back, yeah, if you can go back like this, the little notch that is shown kind of here.
Yeah, the notch needs to be added there. Yes, you're right.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Just wanted to
No,
clarify
good
that.
eye. Good
Awesome.
eye, Chris.
Good, so it's not flush.
Now we know we can't get anything past you next time we come.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions or comments. This is
All right, does anyone else have any
looking
other
really nice.
questions or comments?
If when you come back for final, if you could just provide those details on the cornice and the eaves and the return there.
We will,
And
will
on the
do.
windows. And
Yes, if you could specify the materials, that would be terrific.
Yes.
are you
will do.
intending to use wood or hardy?
We don't know exactly yet.
Okay.
I mean, it would be nice to use hardy because it would be easier maintenance. So
If you
It's
use
just-
hardy, go ahead, Margaret.
No, go ahead, Alex.
Because if you use hardy, it should be plain and not wood grain.
yeah, I hate the wood grain hardy. So yeah, I don't like to use that on anything.
Sorry, Margaret.
No, it's okay. It's just nice to see something that really looked at the Secretary of the Interior standard at concept. It's good. This is a good example.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I really like the design also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have nothing further.
Since this is conceptual, we have nothing to vote on. We're just providing comment. Right?
So we should see you again in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and then you'll provide all of the material detailing and whatnot.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well,
All
great.
right,
If
thanks.
there are no more comments or concerns, then we'll move to the next item. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so the last item on our agenda is 4612 Clinton Avenue, the Wells residence. And who's here to speak for this one? Chris Rood, right?
Yes. Thank you very much. How's everybody doing? I hope we're surviving the snowfall.
Great,
Slow but
welcome.
steady. So, Chris Lozier, good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Good to see you too.
Yeah. Okay, so again, we also have quite a few slides here, so we can move through relatively quickly. The property is located at 4612 Clinton Avenue, Zone 2 family. Maximum height is 35, or you can go to 50 with appropriate setbacks, obviously. And then our proposed height is 27 feet. So this just gives a aerial and then a location for the plot. Next slide. This is what the site looks like currently. It is a vacant site in between an existing house, and then there's new construction going on the others on the east side of the site. This is from the south lot line looking north. If you go to the next slide. And then this is from Wheat Court looking south towards Clinton of the same site. And you can see the dumpsters kind of in our site there. Next slide. This gives some ideas of some surrounding context in terms of different styles of construction and architectural styles that are within the neighborhood. Obviously, the more contemporary that has sort of it's kind of a modern take on Victorian proportions, and then you have more traditional gabled. Next slide. So this is a site plan. The main structure itself is 2-story total of 2,940 square feet. That includes a 2-story breezeway that is conditioned. So essentially what we create is the main building. We have a 2-story breezeway that goes back to a garage that has a guest suite above it. And then that creates a courtyard in between. So the garage is approximately 517 square feet, and our total conditioned space is about 3,400. One of the things we want to do on the site in terms of proportions is we wanted to maintain the frontage relative to the new construction that's happening to the east. And we are slightly set back from the existing structure to the west. Now we have a minimum 3-foot side yard setback. The actual distance to the neighboring house is approximately 5 feet. And the intent is to put in a privacy fence along that setback line. Next slide. This essentially shows the basement. It's a combination of unfinished space. There'd be a guest bedroom. We have window wells that would provide egress. And then we have mechanical bath closet. Next slide. On the first floor, you can see the configuration, living, dining. The entry is a little bit different in that we have the entry door that happens off the side as opposed to off the front facade. One of the requests from the block club initially was to create a much more robust front porch, which we have also done here. So we've created the front porch, transition living and dining area. You can see that in the breezeway first floor, there's a mudroom. You can see the exterior patio where we would have an exterior fireplace, and then the garage on the first level. Next slide. And then we do have at the front entry point, there would be an open to below. The bedroom that faces that would have glazing that would allow exterior light in. There's a Jack and Jill bath that happens off the 2 bedrooms. And then you have the master that has a closet, master bath. Hall and laundry would happen. And then we do have a guest suite above the garage. Now, the intent is that this would be a dedicated guest suite. There was some pushback from the block club regarding whether or not this would be used as an Airbnb, that sort of thing. And the owner indicated that their intent was that essentially this would end up being an in-law suite. Next slide. So this shows the south elevation as it is facing Clinton, and then also shows the east elevation, which is offset from the property line along the east. Now, some of the changes we made with this were we initially had an offset gable. We normalized the roof gable. The roof gable faces the street to echo what other houses are doing on the street. We are elevated from street level approximately 3 feet to create that transition from street to the porch. And then you can see the grade change in the east elevation as it moves from the front to the rear. And there would be exterior stair access to the second floor guest suite that happens above the garage. Next slide. This shows the rear. We have essentially vehicular access to the garage obviously would happen off of Wheat Court. So you can see the windows for the guest suite above. You have your garage access. And then along the west elevation, the proposed privacy fence that would happen. And then you can see the material transition that happens along there. Next slide. So some of the materials we're proposing would be a gray modular face brick, architectural precast stone at the base. The wood accents at the front would be, what we're proposing would be a Nishiha vintage wood cedar fiber cement panel as opposed to doing an actual wood. And then we would also have gray fiber cement paneled siding that would happen primarily along the west facade. Next slide. So this shows the front perspective. You can see the porch that is created, but we also have the offset entry that happens into essentially what is a two-story foyer, pardon me, into the building. And you can see the combination of stone accents and the brick. And then you can also see how it transitions back towards the interior courtyard. Next slide. And this shows it from another perspective. This is an attempt to show the combination of the privacy fence and to show the height relative to the neighboring house that's being built. Next slide. This is essentially a conceptual view looking back towards Wheat Court, showing the interior courtyard, the steps that transition up to the guest suite. Next slide. And then this shows the rear of the house looking towards Clinton.
Any comments or questions from committee members?
Is there an intent to put a privacy fence on the east property line?
Chris, there is not currently. We could potentially. Essentially, the reason we didn't was because of the depth of offset. If you go to the site plan, if you keep going. However, that's something we could certainly add.
Could we just step back for a sec? Could somebody, I don't know who, but could somebody on this call give kind of an overview of where this project is in the whole approval process? There was kind of an attachment of some block club or landmark feedback. I just want to make sure I understand what the kind of the whole timeline of this very quickly.
This is conceptual review only right now. This is the first time you all are seeing it, so you're just here to give feedback. And then it'll go to landmarks for conceptual review and then return.
The only thing they've done is go to the block club so far.
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
We go to the front elevation image. There are a couple, I don't care which one. Page 10, for example. Yeah. So my main area of feedback has to do with this elevation here with the front. And it's a little off balance. And we're looking for in the Secretary of Interior standards for new construction for it to match the fenestration sort of cadence of the street.
Okay.
And one of the first things I would note there is I think the pitch of the gable of the roof line is too shallow. And I think it needs to be adjusted there. The second main point is that on the facade there, you have 5 different window types. 4 are seen here in this image. And that really needs to be simplified. And I think that the openings, there needs to be more balance there across the fenestration of the front. And it might need more openings, it might not, but that needs to be adjusted there. And those windows in the center, the smaller ones, I think actually throw it off. I know it's trying to lead balance visually with a midpoint, but I think it's throwing the whole thing off.
Okay.
And those are, I think, the 2 main things. If I could only choose 2 things to adjust, those would be the 2, are the windows and the pitch of the roof line. Overall, bigger picture, some of the materiality components, you show a hardier fiberboard there, like we told the last applicant. I would not have that be wood grain. I would have that be flat. And then for the overall site plan, this differs a little from the prior applicant in that you have a little bit more room here. And I think that the house might be too squished. You have at least another 20 feet, I think I saw on the site plan, between the garage door and the alley. And most garages on Wheat Court, and I live off of Wheat Court, so I'm familiar with it, are right up along the property line or close to it. And to maintain that cadence of the alley with all of the garages being flush with or near the alley lot line. And so that might mean extending the breezeway a little bit more. But as a practical matter for the owner, land is hard to come by in Ohio City. I wouldn't necessarily want to cede all of that land unnecessarily. And I'd push the garage more towards the alley and extend the breezeway if you had to.
Okay.
And then back to materiality, the gray brick. There was a member of Landmarks Commission who would definitely have had something to say about gray brick. Cleveland is gray enough as it is. And we don't find a lot of that in the historic district. Maybe consider a different color.
Okay.
Those are, I'll stop there. Those are my main ones. I have more details, but I'll stop with the big picture.
Well, I would echo most of Alex's comments here.
Okay.
Just kind of follow up on them individually. If we go back to the front elevation, I have a little bit different response to that. And one is, I think that the larger window openings, I think if they were, I would agree that I would say the proportion of the openings looks fine to me, but I think a different kind of window, either, if you don't want to go traditional double hung, look at casements or something like that. But that, this is so different than any other fenestration. I think that doing something with the fenestration, look at some other alternatives without, telling you what to do. My other problem with the front elevation is all that brick. There's something about the materiality and that built out pilaster at the corner, that with all the same material, I'd either get rid of that pilaster or think about making the brick on the front something else, like maybe the front is all wood and then the brick signals a material change at that corner. So maybe think about that a little bit. I think and that might help address the concern about the gray brick, because not so much of it would be on the front. And then I guess last, I agree with the materiality concerns that Alex expressed, but I guess regarding the site, I'm not so concerned with moving the garage back so much towards the alley, although that's a valid point. I wonder why you've squished it up to the building on the west side with only 5 feet between, and those window area ways, are going to be then occupying most of that 3-foot space between the building and the fence, making it difficult to access back there. You don't have a driveway going down the side of the house. I try to center it a little bit more.
Balance it out. Yeah. Okay.
Give a little more breathing room on the west side of the house. And,
okay.
So that's pretty much it for me, I think. Any other comments from committee members? Questions?
I'm not a committee member, but I do have a question or two addressing that. Centering the building more would also take care of, you would need a variance for that privacy fence not being far enough away from the neighboring house. So at least 6 feet. So moving it over would take care of that required variance. Do you have any other variances that you anticipate needing?
None other that are anticipated, no.
Okay. And Nate, can you move that back to the photos of the current? One more. Keep going, one more, please. I just wanted to, okay. Is that curb cut on your property or on the neighboring property?
That is currently on our property.
I think since everything is being done and the garage is being put to the back, that curb cut should be removed.
Yeah, the intent was to abandon it, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would remove all of that concrete and plant grass there as well. Potentially even a street tree.
Yeah, I can't recall another curb cut on Clinton because Vine and Wheat Court service both sides.
Yeah, it's been a lot hard over the years to not have any curb cuts because there's so few on that street.
And the only other thing I would throw in for when you come back for final, perhaps putting an elevation study with at least 2 or 3 buildings to either side here to see how this fits into the overall context and height to everything else.
Yeah, block them out just to scale so you can see the mapping relative to one.
That was gonna be my request. From what I can tell, it looks like the massing is nicely appropriate here, but seeing that would be helpful, that elevation study.
And then that's all I had.
And again, I would reinforce Alex's initial point about the roof pitch. If they could turn the roof pitch a little bit, it would correspond better to other homes in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I agree with most of what others said. I think Alex's point about all the different window shapes and sizes, and also just all of the different patterns of the internal muttons. I feel like it would help this design if there could be just a simplification of the elements at play. I think it's okay if there's, you know, different window sizes, but I think there needs to be some anchor into sort of historical proportions or shapes and sizes. So, you know, maybe it's taking those little small kind of clearer story looking windows that are on the front facade, like could those become kind of more sort of more traditional proportion vertical windows, or like I think that choosing at least one kind of anchor that references the pretty like a more historic facade would help, even if you still have, it's obviously still a much more modern set of kind of materials and proportions and things like that. I just think that there's so many things going on and everything feels different from everything else that it feels a little unanchored to me. And I'm just kind of looking for some kind of visual through line that then relates back to other houses in the neighborhood. I know that's like a little bit of an abstract comment, but that's kind of my feeling.
No, but that makes sense. Yeah. Yep.
Rika, that was what I was trying to say as well. Yeah, I agree.
Was there a consideration for the front door to face the front at any point?
There actually was. After I had created an iteration of that after the first block club meeting, and the owner actually requested to move it back to the side. That's it's an element that the owner prefers. But yes, I had created a version where it would come off the front.
I think that might be impacting also what's happening with the windows, but if you get the windows balanced, then maybe, you know, missing that front door facing the front won't stand out as much to me.
Well, and based on based on everybody's feedback as well, as I'm looking at it, just in terms of the proportions of the mullion placement across the two, that could also be more consistent between the two. Yeah.
And one last request I would have is just a bit more detail on that outdoor fireplace that feels a little plopped down in the middle there. It's a little hard to see what's going on there, but since that is still visible from the street, I think it would be helpful to understand kind of the design intent a bit more on that.
Okay.
I think Margaret brought up a very good point. Maybe that's what we're reacting to, at least in part, is that there's no front. When you look at this image here, this elevation, there's no front door to anchor the eye to allow you to read the facade in a more traditional way. I think that might have a lot to do with what we're reacting to.
Yep. Okay.
I think another thing that might help the roof line is to fatten up the rake board on the front. It looks kind of skinny, you know, in proportion to the house. Maybe, I don't know what it is, 1x6 or 1x8, but you know, make it a few inches thicker, and it would, I think, respond better to the overall mass of the house. Plus that very deep overhang, since the roof comes up at the same point, but the front of the house steps back.
And you have those horizontal bands there delineating the floors, which I don't have an objection to, but it might be better if you use the horizontal element in a more traditional way, like a lintel or a sill, instead of it going across that way. Just something to think about.
Okay.
Yeah, traditionally, even if you kept those sill bands going there, if you added a lintel stone across the top, that would give it a little bit more traditional flavor too.
And when you come back for final review, you may want to also include where you're going to put your air conditioning external unit, just because potential for variance is needed on the side yard and where it's placed. Look into that, what's allowable and what's not.
And those windows, do any of those open?
These are not operable as shown.
Maybe that has.
That's not something that's a future discussion with the owner, actually. So, yeah.
I think that might help as well to have them operable, because you know, that's the predominant window type on the street in the historic district.
Yeah.
And to have them inoperable like that, it lends a slight commercial feel to it.
Yeah.
That I think stands out, you know, in a way that the people react negatively to,
Yep.
or feel that it's not quite right.
Any other comments or concerns? Again, this is conceptual, so we won't take a vote on this today.
All right, well, if no other comments, thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing the next iteration.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Doug, do you want to go ahead and end the meeting now?
Yes, that was our last item, so this concludes this meeting of the Ohio City Design Review Committee. You can end the recording.